So I have to move the slides, which, okay, here we go. Yeah. So the topic today is really about the pharmaceutical industry. What is the current situation? What are the drivers for change? And to start, I would like to give an overview of some of the important facts to see where we are. So overall, the pharmaceutical industry is the sector with the highest R&D intensity. You can see it on this screen. And the pharmaceuticals and biotechnology is really followed by software and computer services, technology, hardware, and so on. And if you compare with chemicals, it's about 7 to 8 times the level of R&D intensity. So these are actual data from the 2020 EU Industrial R&D Investment Scoreboard. So I try to move to the next slide, which for strange reason is slow. Okay, I just have to hit the button harder. So here, this shows the pharma R&D spending since 1990 and until very recent 2019. So you can see that the R&D spending in pharma is drastically increasing, but mainly in the US. So currently, as you see on the slide, since a few years, it's slightly increasing in Japan. It is increasing in Europe, but the biggest piece is really in the US. And if you look at the overall biggest part where the money really goes to are clinical trials. So the clinical trials count almost to 50% of the cost of R&D in pharma. It is clear that the late stage, phase 3, is the biggest part with almost 30%. So in order to become more effective and cost effective, it is clear that the clinical trials are in the major focus of improvement in the development of new medicines and to bring them to patients, because it's also a time factor which is in parallel with the cost. So the number of clinical trials are really increasing year by year. And the key area is, and this is also not surprising, is oncology, followed by infectious diseases, which of course the COVID-19 crisis is also a big driver for this development. Then it's followed by neurology and hematology, which is also to a big part oncology, respiratory and other indications which are mainly related to immunoinflammation. So what is changing over the years? And if you look at the different time frames and the different focus, before 2000, and also Dr. Stilz knows that very well, it was far more easy to develop drugs like ACE inhibitors for hypertension or lipid lowering agents. You had a target, you went to the lab and you made great molecules. So this was, I would say, fairly straightforward, but then things changed. And I remember very well the day when the first biologic came on the market in the area of rheumatoid arthritis and inflammation. And so people said, oh, people will not use this because you have to inject it and you have side effects and so on. But they were proven really wrong. So the following development was really then more towards the biologics. And today, really, we talk about genes, we talk about messenger RNA, and we talk about gene therapy, and things which have been done ex vivo in the past, like the CAR T cells, in actual research. This is now already being in progress to be done in vivo. So the end is not even near in this field. Also going back to the clinical trials, to the endpoint. So they were traditional discrete. Then more biomarkers, but still traditional clinical trial schemes were applied. And today we really need to be, as it's personal, as new therapies are personalized, we need to go to far more adaptive clinical trials, and you need far more information, and you work with genomics, and those are longitudinal designs, adaptive, and the digital field becomes more and more important. So on the data ownership, it was pharma in the beginning, and today it's really the different players in the health field, which includes the payers, the providers, and most important here, really, the patient. So in consequence, the probability of success of a medicine is more high if you are more personalized. But on the other side, if you look at the pricing, that as a consequence also increases. So you need to be very aligned with the payers and the patient to make sure that the therapies you want to bring to, or you bring to market, are really paid finally by the society. So, well, it's from my company, but we just had a meeting with him today. The Sanofi CEO, Paul Hudson, in fact, recently said, and it was published at Fortune magazine, while competition spurs innovation, cooperation could lead to even bigger breakthroughs in the world of medicine. And I guess this is one of the reasons why Professor J brings people together and supports cooperation. So my core responsibility is really the public-private partnership field. And I had the honor already at Isd Chip to present and talk about the largest global health public-private partnership, which is the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is still ongoing. It started in 2008 and it will run another 2 years. And it's overall mainly a partnership between the pharmaceutical industry and the European Commission. And it makes sure that budgets are available and that the investment is being shared by the pharma industry and the society. The overall budget is about 5 billion euro. And so you can imagine you can do very nice and great projects with this budget. It's important to mention that the investment by pharma companies is mostly headcount. That means the pharmaceutical industry contributes really with people and knowledge and are active in the projects, not just observing and asking for results for paying. They really work hand in hand with the academic and public partners. So this really fosters the collaboration between the key players in the health research from public and private. So 181 projects with about 7,000 outputs have been achieved to date, and an immense amount of publications with very high index, significantly above the average. So the overall spending is shown here. The biggest part where the money was spent or is still spent is infection control. One of the reasons is there is a high medical need. Even before the COVID-19 situation, there is a high medical need. If you look at resistant bacteria, if if you look at viral infections and so on. And a big problem in the sector is that the business case is almost in every case negative, which means you develop something and at the end it does not pay off for the company. So it's very, but I come to more details later. So there are other indications like the digital field, neurodegeneration, and Uli Stilz knows this very well because he was one of the key leaders to implement this program, was the diabetic metabolic disorder field. So I would like to give a few examples a bit more in detail, of course, watching the time I have available. So antimicrobial resistance, the biggest field of investment in the Innovative Health Initiative. So this slide shows different projects or consortia at different stages in the field where needs are to overcome barriers to AMR innovation. So at the beginning in basic research, there is still need to explore how bacteria protect themselves. Then in the discovery and translation field, you need to ensure that, for example, small and medium enterprise can somehow bring their ideas into clinical trials. Then development and infrastructure is the biggest piece, because here active clinical trials are executed under this program. And I mentioned this, the economic part is also very important, because you need new economic models to intensify the antibiotic discovery, while on the other side, safeguarding efficacy and use of antibiotics in order to have a balanced or a balance between using antibiotics and having them somehow in the reserve if you need them. So here there is again the overall number for investment, and you see that it's shared between the IMI, where the money comes from the European community, and the EFPIA, which is the Association of the European Pharmaceutical Industry. Of course, this includes also global companies from all companies mostly are global, even if they're based in the US or in other countries, are part of this organization. So it's quite a powerful setup. And to conclude here, there are, as usual, more candidates in the preclinical phase, but at the moment there are really 2 compounds, and likely it will be 3 in the next 2 years. There will be 3 compounds in late stage phase 3, which will maybe, hopefully, likely make it to the patient. So overall, this slide shows the benefit of the PPP model, which significantly outweighs the cost of going alone. So in the traditional model, where you develop your own drug as a company or as a major institution, the costs are in the $1 billion or euro range. And this delivers you 1 drug. In the collaboration model, you get it for much less. So you achieve in the same way 2 to 3 drugs instead of 1. That is possible due to contributions from many partners, everybody bringing his or her best capabilities to the table. So the cost reduction is significant. And also the innovation is pushed because you bring more people together, advancing their ideas, being challenged by others. And so it's a competitive process, of course. But once you have agreed to a consortium, then collaboration is key and is really first on the agenda. Another field where a high medical need exists is the field of pediatrics, and also the rare disease. And often pediatrics and rare disease go hand in hand. So there is just a limited patient population. And this means that rare diseases and pediatric conditions basically have left behind, not totally left behind, but more left behind than we would appreciate as a society, because there were barriers in the traditional clinical development because of the low sample size, and also odds with existing, it says here exciting, but actually that's a typo, existing policies. And as a consequence, it is economically often unviable. And so that's why there has been very often little hope for these patients until now. So in the IMI, that was a big focus, and the areas to look at are in the science. So to advance really the basic understanding of a disease. And there are new discoveries which are related to certain type of indications like autism, type 1 diabetes, and so on. And cutting edge science is key. So you need certain tools like comprehensive genetic screening. This was established for newborns, and advanced gene therapies and stem cells for pediatrics and rare diseases in general. Data are important, and so there need to be new ways of using and leveraging the data. And here, huge patient records have been established, reducing the time to initial outcomes from 2 years to 3 weeks. That is really incredible. Biobanks and repositories, huge numbers of them. Just to mention one type 1 diabetes biobank, which really makes it very easy in case there are interventional trials to get a collective together and get started. Stem cell lines as well. So in the infrastructure, we have established and harmonized really pan-European clinical infrastructures, and this goes also in collaboration with sites in the US with different organizations. So that's why there is now a much more focused and available opportunity to bring potential candidates into an infrastructure for develop them as drugs. Another field is immunology. We have seen that there is less of an investment overall, but still a huge medical need in certain indications, which also affects children. If you look at atopic dermatitis, that was still a big challenge a few years ago, and just very recently, this has been improved with markets really coming, with drugs coming to market being very efficient. But there are responders and non-responders. And that's why 4 years ago, there was a huge initiative started by the R&D heads of companies. And in fact, 2 R&D heads, one from Roche, one from Sanofi, have really brought people together. And on this picture, you really see all the immunology heads of different companies in one room. Probably that has never happened before. So the agreement was to address really fundamental gaps, which is high rates of clinical trial failure, and the fact that you have a huge amount of people or patients who do not respond to the therapies you give them. And also exacerbation and relapses are unpredictable. So as an outcome of this workshop, a big project portfolio in immunology has been put together with a total budget of 200 million euro in total. So now, where have we gotten today? So projects are still ongoing, but as of today, and we can see and have already huge access to cohorts. So clinical data sets over 80,000, clinical trial centers over 80, number of patients and cohorts 6,021, 32,064, and so on. So based on this, you have a circle where you can go from molecular signatures, which show response or non-response to treatment. You get to a to a network of key opinion leaders for prospective clinical trials. You can identify non-responders and also new targets, which gives you more focused pathway of interest. And based on retrospective cohorts, you can validate and the circle starts again. And this is now really up and running. And this was only possible. And the 3TR project, which you see here in the middle, is the largest immunology collaboration ever put together between academics and pharmaceutical industry. So the digital field is the third area I was putting to give some effort. It is clear that with all the opportunities we have today, digital projects will reshape clinical discovery, development, and up to really the complete healthcare delivery. So this goes really, you have examples of projects for all of the different steps, for blockchain initiatives, so innovations in clinical development, patient monitoring solutions, leveraging of big data, and still this is in progress. So the examples are really, I cannot go to time through all of them, just to maybe mention the Mobile Isd Project, which is really a comprehensive system which monitors and evaluates patients' mobility with digital technologies. For example, an Alzheimer patient, who is moving at her home or his home, and it's really you can track all the movements, and you can draw conclusions on the situation and maybe even of the activity of a drug. So all that has been taken its way into current practice already. So in my final part, I would like to announce, and 1st of December, just a few days ago, the EFPIA, the CEOs of the EFPIA companies at the EFPIA board have given green light to the great successor of IMI, which is IHI, and it's now the Innovative Health Initiative. This is now not only pharma and academics, this is now really a combination of pharma, medtech, IT, and other contributors. And so it's significantly a cross-sectorial initiative, and it's now starting. So the focus is in the IHI. So again, IHI stands for Innovative Health Initiative, which is the successor of IMI, and as I mentioned, cross-sectorial, going closer to the patient needs and going much closer to what is really being used or being foreseen as a treatment delivery to patients. So this is reflected in the long goal, which is mentioned here. In short words, we need to deliver the best drugs to the patient quick, based on prevention, of course, based on diagnosis, and the focus are non-communicable and infectious diseases. And also it's important to preserve the healthcare system and the competitiveness of the health industry. Because we should never forget, we have to somehow keep the competitiveness, because otherwise it would be not a motivation to bring new drugs to the market. So the areas of action are biotechnology, technology for more precise diagnosis, treatment, and care. This also includes production sites and using the most updated technologies. Patient-centric integrated healthcare solutions, big data and machine learning. Citizens and patients have to be even more empowered to engage in their own health plan and treatment. And value initiatives really to drive investment and reward innovation, mostly in areas where you have per se a negative business case. So those are examples which are currently under development concretely. So it's being now discussed, and the first topics, and they will be launched in the second half of this year, likely April or May. So it goes, concrete examples are neurodegenerative diseases, imaging and diagnosis for cancer, precision oncology, and interactive tools for prediction, prevention, and monitoring of cardiovascular diseases, use and access to heterogeneous health data, which is a big field to make to combine databases you have and it makes the optimal use. Strengthen clinical development excellence and innovation attractiveness, and patient preferences, patient-recorded outcomes in real-world evidence. So that is my last slide. The IHI from December 1st of this year will be a driver for the changing R&D landscape. It will boost in precision immunology, neurodegeneration, oncology, digital health, and integrated healthcare solutions. It will be built on the successful integration of all stakeholders, and it will focus on non-competitive research with a fixed or defined IP framework, but it will also go into the commercialization of results when appropriate to the societal needs. And this is also why this is so interesting for today. There can be clearly global participation. Also, the funding to academics will go mostly to European institutions, but the participation from pharma industry is very welcome from all parts of the world. So with this, I would just express, and again, the most to Professor Su-Chan Choi for the opportunity to talk to you here today. Thank you very much.